Hello. Alright. I started filming this before and I fucked up and lost the video, and now I'm fucking kind of pissed about that. So why am I here? What am I doing? Obviously it's Christmas. It's actually Christmas. It's like 3 a.m. on Christmas Eve, so it's technically... No, it's 3 a.m. on Christmas now. That's the next day, so... but on Thursday night, the night before Christmas, I went and saw Spider-Man: No Way Home. That's why I'm here. Of all the MCU movies of the year, this has been my favorite. It hit all the right notes in just the right ways. You know, all these movies have their unique Marvel quirkiness, but this one landed the best in my opinion. Out of all the four of them that came out this year, this one was the best. The movie, of course, stars Tom Holland as Peter Parker, aka Spider-Man, the main character. Another major character in the movie is his girlfriend, Michelle Jones, MJ Watson, played by the actress Zendaya. Then there's his best friend, Ned Leeds, who's played by... I keep forgetting this fucker's name. Jesus Christ almighty. Come on. Who's played by... Oh wait, Jacob Batalon. Now with Ned there, the difference is obviously, I'm putting up pictures of, the characters and who they're technically supposed to be playing. Now, obviously you notice with Zendaya, she doesn't look anything like the MJ from the comic books, but she's also got a completely different name. So it's more like an homage to MJ as she is the actual representation of her. But Jacob Batalon just is named Ned Leeds, and he obviously doesn't look like Ned Leeds from the comic books. Ned Leeds is a white guy who at one point was like brainwashing to believe he was the villain known as the Hobgoblin. Which that piece of information has absolutely nothing to do with this movie, but it's just something I'm throwing out there. Obviously, he looks nothing like the character. His race and ethnicity and inspiration for how he looks is more closely to the Miles Morales' Spider-Man's character's best friend, Genki Lee. I think that's how you pronounce his first name. But, he's called Ned Leeds, so it's just the way it is. I don't know what else to tell you. I guess he just didn't want to do Harry Osborn anymore. Anywho. Let's see. Where we at? Oh, yeah, so anyways... his Aunt May, who's played by Marissa Tomei, which is funny because I think about every time I see Marissa Tomei playing Aunt May, I think of the Amy Schumer show bit about actresses reaching their unfuckable years, and about how they're talking about how they're getting, their old roles are now being casted with much younger actresses. And I just look at how the actresses who played Aunt May have just gotten younger and younger and younger. It's like the first one, in the first three Spider-Man movies, Aunt May was played by an actress named Rosemary Harris, who I think was in her fucking 70s at the time. And then in the next two Spider-Man movies, the Amazing Spider-Man movies, it was she played by Sally Fields, who I believe was in her... Actually, she might have been in her 70s too, at that time. 60s or 70s. But I feel like she was younger than Rosemary Harris. And now Aunt May is played by fucking Marissa Tomei, who's just, I think might be in her 50s. Definitely still got a serious milfish quality to her, but it's just kind of funny. It's like, I wonder how young the actress who plays Aunt May will be next time. So, but that's if they reboot the Spider-Man franchise, which they may or may not. I don't know. With this weird deal with Sony, God only knows what is going to happen with the Marvel movies, or if Sony just goes off and does their own Spider-Man movies again. They're building their own thing with their Spider-Man. So who knows? Who knows? But we'll see. And then, of course, there's also Harold Happy Hogan, who's played by Jon Favreau. He's been around since, the original Marvel movie and Iron Man, so, he's very ingrained into these, but he's become part of the whole Spider-Man thing, too. He's also plays a big role in this. There's been a lot of rumors about this movie since it was first announced. Some of them have been confirmed, some of them have been left up in the air. But there's a lot of things to break down in this movie, because it is cameo heavy, it is nostalgia heavy on just comic books and the MCU and the Spider-Man franchises in general. So, major spoiler alerts coming up. Okay, so let's break it down here. If you didn't watch the last Spider-Man movie, you didn't know that at the end of it, a video was created by the villain of the movie, Mysterio, who was played by Jake Gyllenhaal, basically framing Spider-Man for his murder, and revealing to the world that Spider-Man is in fact Peter Parker. So not only has he been labeled a potential murderer, his whole identity has now been added, and his life's been turned upside down. And this is all done on the Daily Bugle podcast, the internet podcast by J. Jonah Jameson, who is once again played by J.K. Simmons, like he was in the original Spider-Man movies. Who is still, in my opinion, one of the best casting in a superhero or comic book movie. J.K. Simmons just nailed J. Jonah Jameson. He does it again in this. Although he doesn't show up that much, but he is kind of just in it. He's just your general asshole in this, leading the charge against Spider-Man, as, he does in the comic books, at least up until recently. So that fucks up shit for Peter. He gets up in potential legal trouble with the police coming after him, a new federal agency called Damage Control and shit. And they come after him and his whole family. And his friends and everything. He manages to dodge that for the most part, because they really don't have anything on him. And I mean, technically, Mysterio was the one in the wrong, so... that aspect of it kind of gets dropped pretty quickly, but you can tell that the police are definitely up his ass now and everything. And this is where we get our first cameo, and this is one that was rumored about but wasn't quite established. When just talking with a lawyer, you see the lawyer he's talking to is none other than played by the actor Charlie Cox, who's reprising his role of Matt Murdock, aka Daredevil. And you don't see him as Daredevil in this movie, but there is a hint, of course, that he has abilities. Somebody throws a rock through the window of Peter's apartment, and he just catches it in midair, even though he's blind. And Peter even asks him, he's like, "How did you do that?" And he just goes, "I'm a very good lawyer." And it's just like, it's like, oh, he's still, so he comes back as Daredevil. There was talk that he wanted to do that, so who knows? Maybe we'll see him in a TV show or something down the line, or maybe a movie. Who knows? But we are not anywhere done with the cameos. one of the issues that Peter has is that it's not just affecting him, but it's affecting his friends and family. It's fucking up their lives. It affects, he gets rejected from all the colleges he's trying to get into, and so do his friends, and it's because they've all become super famous and really polarizing, because some people believe Peter's a criminal, some don't. And so he's trying to come up with a solution for the problem. So he goes to Doctor Strange. This is the next cameo. Now, this is where I have to back up a little bit, because this movie is definitely influenced by two very specific comic book storylines. It's influenced by one, the Civil War miniseries, where Peter revealed his secret identity to the public and then had to go on the run as a fugitive. It's weird shit happened in that story, but just know that that's the course of what happened with Spider-Man. And then while being on the run as a fugitive, one of his enemies came after him and shot his aunt and almost killed her. So to save her, we entered a new storyline called One More Day, where he was offered a deal by Mephisto, basically the Marvel Universe's version of the devil. So he made a deal with the devil to save his aunt, but the cost was he was going to lose his marriage to his then wife, Mary Jane Watson, and it basically rewrote his history, so they never got married. So he just lost that relationship. Even though they eventually got back together again, but they're not married anymore, but still, it's like, it was such a weird storyline. It was so dumb. It was so strange. They rewrote the history now that but the way they rewrote the history is that it's like, okay, so then how is it working now that nobody remembers who he was? Because like the history was written that they weren't married, and Aunt May was alive, but he didn't reveal his identity anymore. So it's like, did he just not reveal his identity? It's like, no, that still happened, but the way he fixed it is now he went to Doctor Strange, and worked in Doctor Strange working with Reed Richards. They found a way to erase everybody's memory that Peter Parker was in fact Spider-Man. And Aunt May getting shot, he just saved her with like CPR. It's like, I don't know why he didn't just do that the first time, but whatever. So yeah, that's how that ties in with this, is because he doesn't make a deal with the devil in the movie, but he does try to make a deal with Doctor Strange, who we find out is no longer the Sorcerer Supreme. Doctor Strange is of course played by the actor Benedict Cumberbatch. And he's no longer Sorcerer Supreme. Since he was gone for 5 years, he was replaced by Wong, who is played by the actor Benedict Wong. Peter asks if Strange can go back in time and erase it so that his identity was never revealed. And Doctor Strange tells him that tampering with time like that is a risky thing to do, and to do it to, just undo a bad thing that happened to Peter would be, irresponsible. And he goes, plus I don't have the time stone anymore, so it's not like I can't even really travel back in time. But then he comes up with an idea to cast a spell that could erase everybody's memory of Peter as Spider-Man. And Wong warns that he shouldn't do it, but Strange ass, it's like, come on. And Wong's like, alright, but I don't want anything to do with it, which is very irresponsible for the Sorcerer Supreme, I might add. But so while putting together the spell, Peter keeps trying to change it, because he doesn't want everybody to forget he's Spider-Man. He doesn't want MJ or Aunt May or Ned or anybody. And so he's like, you keep changing the spell, and when he changes the spell, it gets out of control and it causes some weird damage, but Strange is able to contain it. And then Strange finds out, he's like, that he didn't even try to like ask if he could get, to try to like plead his case to somebody at the college, because Peter didn't even realize he could do that. So Strange throws him out, and then Peter tries to go talk to the chancellor of MIT, or the vice chancellor or something, I don't know, some woman who's a big shot at MIT, to like plead his case. But he's not even pleading his case for himself, he's pleading his case for his friends. He's like, I just want them to get in, I don't want my decisions to fuck up their life, because he's a very selfless guy like that. Now while he's doing that, all of a sudden they're attacked on the freeway he's on, and it's none other than Dr. Octopus, played by none other than Alfred Molina, who you might remember from the original Spider-Man trilogy. He and Peter fight. Peter's wearing his Iron Spider costume in the movies, which looks a little different than the Iron Spider costume in the comic book. But that's important for a reason, because while they're fighting, Dr. Octopus rips off part of the Iron Spider costume and sees that it's nanotech, and the nanotech merges with his mechanical tentacles, and Peter's able to take over the tentacles that way. So he just stops Doc Ock that way, and he saves the Chancellor, and she thanks him and says, it's like, she's like, I'll make sure you and your friends get in. She's like, just keep your nose clean and everything. And then while he's talking to Dr. Octopus, because Dr. Octopus saw that Peter looks different, he's like, you're not my Peter. And while they're talking to Dr. Octopus about who he is and where the hell he came from, all of a sudden they're attacked by none other than Green Goblin, who you might remember from the original Spider-Man movie is played by none other than Willem Dafoe. And even Octavius, Dr. Octopus, is thrown off by this, because he's supposed to be dead. And so all of a sudden they get teleported somewhere by Doctor Strange, and they're in this weird like dungeon where they find that Dr. Octopus is now imprisoned in a mystical prison, and alongside him is the Lizard, who was from the first Amazing Spider-Man movie, where he was played by Rhys Ifans. And he looks pretty much the same. He looks weirder than he did in the comic books. I didn't like the short nose thing. I liked the longer actual lizard-like look, but they went with that for a reason. But whatever. It didn't look that bad this time around. This is where Doctor Strange explains that the fucking up of the spell caused the space-time to be ruptured or something like that, and now people who know Peter Parker is Spider-Man from different universes are now been slipping into theirs. So he goes looking for people. Doctor Strange gives him he casts a spell on one of his web shooters and says, like, if you shoot guys with this, mystical webs now, it'll teleport them right into one of these prisons. So he's like, so just shoot them with this and we'll get them here, and then we'll figure out a way to send them back to where they're supposed to be. So he manages to, he starts looking for people, he starts looking for signs of weird things, and he goes out to where these power lines are, because somebody attacked a military base, and while he's going out swinging around near these power lines, he sees something moving around in the forest, and then all of a sudden Electro appears, and it's Electro from the second Amazing Spider-Man movie, where he was played by Jamie Foxx. Now this time around he looks more Jamie Foxx-ish, because they're going the more traditional Electro look instead of the ultimate Electro look that they went for in the Amazing Spider-Man movie, in the second Amazing Spider-Man movie, which I prefer the more traditional look. I'm not gonna lie, I didn't like the blue guy look. That was dumb and boring looking, to be honest. But that's just me. He and Electro fight, and he gets helped by none other than Flint Marko, the Sandman, also played, oh yeah, and Electro's real name is Max Dillon. And the Lizard's real name is Kurt Connors. I don't know why I don't know why I'm even mentioning that. It doesn't matter. But yeah, Sandman shows up and he's played by none other than Thomas Hayden Church again, like he was in the third movie of the original Spider-Man trilogy. So now we have at least one villain from each of those movies showing up. So Peter, with the help of Sandman, manages to contain Electro and then teleports him away to the mystical prison. And then it seemed like things were cool with Sandman, but then Sandman starts getting a little angry at Peter and it's looking like he might attack, so Peter teleports him to a prison. Oh, and the reason that the Lizard was in the prison already is because Doctor Strange caught him. I don't know if I didn't mention that. I don't know if that came across, but that's what happened. Then all of a sudden he gets a call from Aunt May. Turns out Osborn was having this weird internal argument with this Green Goblin persona, and he broke his helmet, and then he ends up in a homeless shelter that Aunt May works at, and she calls Peter and gets him to come help, and she's like, this guy needs help, and Peter's like, this guy isn't my problem, he just needs to go back home where he belongs. And May just like kind of looks at him like she's a little disappointed. He's like, this isn't my problem. He's like, I'm gonna send these guys back. So Osborn comes back willingly, and while they're talking, all the villains are talking, they all realize that they all ended up dying during their fights with Spider-Man. They all ended up dying, which I never liked in those movies. All the villains always ended up dying. I'm like, that's not what happens. The heroes go out of the way to save even the villains. But I don't know. Then Doctor Strange shows up and he's got this device containing the original spell, and he goes, this contains a spell. He goes, I press a button on this mystical box and it sends all of them back to their home dimension, so where they belong. And Peter's like, yeah, but all these guys are going back to the point where they're going to die fighting the Spider-Man of their universes. And he's like, well, that's kind of their fate. It's like, we can't change that. It's like, we just need to fix what's happening, the problem here. And Peter doesn't like that answer, so he takes the box away from Strange, so he can't use it. Then Doctor Strange and Peter Parker fight, and they have a fight that goes all the way through the mirror dimension, where Peter manages to get the better of Doctor Strange and takes away his sling ring that allows him to travel through different dimensions and leaves him stranded in the mirror dimension. And then he decides he's going to use MJ and Ned's help, and he's going to work with the supervillains, the 5 supervillains. There were 5 of them. I was really hoping there would be a 6 so we could get like a version of the Sinister Six here. I really thought that's what they were going to do. Didn't happen. Still just stayed at 5. Interesting decision, but okay. The Sinister Six is an iconic supervillain team for Spider-Man. Why not do that? I don't know. They had other characters they could have used. That's all I'm saying. I guess they didn't want to use a version of Harry Osborn. That's really what they would have been left with. I could see reasons why they wouldn't want to do that. Anyways. So now it seems like he's already in his sane way, even though the regular Norman Osborn in the comic books is a fucking dildo. Or Norman Osborn is the real name of the Green Goblin. I don't know if I mentioned that already. Anyways, they're coming up with ways to help, and they use a Stark tech that's in Happy's apartment. They're in his apartment building. Peter and his aunt and everybody have been staying there to lay low from the press and everything. the first thing he does is he creates a device to regulate Electro's energy abilities, which Electro doesn't really like at first because he likes having his powers. And then he creates a chip that allows the whole thing with like Dr. Octopus. He had a chip that allowed him to control his tentacles, but then it got broken. So then the tentacles started influencing his mind. So Peter basically creates a new version of that chip and allows like Otto Octavius to come back to his normal self. And then all of a sudden Peter's spider sense starts going off and he can't figure out what the problem is. And he starts like kind of like narrowing it down. He realizes that Green Goblin's the problem. And it turns out Osborn was playing him the whole time. And once that happens, all hell breaks loose. Because then when Osborn reveals that he's been fucking with him, Electro decides to go villainous. And then Sandman makes a run for it. The Lizard had been just staying in a truck outside. And he breaks out. And Electro blasts fucking Dr. Octopus. And it's like... the great thing is Green Goblin and Spider-Man have a fight in the building where Green Goblin like beats the fucking wheels off of Peter, and then even the Lizard gets a few hits in, and Jameson shows up filming the whole thing, and the police show up too. And so basically Electro and Dr. Octopus, after he gets knocked out a window, you don't see him anymore. And then Electro and Sandman make a run for it. Lizard fucks with Peter for a little bit, but then when the police show up, he runs too. Green Goblin is the one who sticks around for a while, and he just beats the shit out of Peter. I mean, he fucks him up bad. And it's funny, during the fight, he was wearing like this like purple hoodie. He's wearing like regular street clothes over what remains of his Goblin costume. It's funny. There's a comedian named Big J Okerson who was talking about the Spider-Man movie, and he talked about Willem Dafoe being Green Goblin, and he made a joke about how it's like he didn't even need a helmet because his actual face is scarier than his Goblin mask. And it's funny because after he breaks the helmet, he just has his normal face, and he's kind of right. So anyways, his purple hoodie gets ripped, so he has like this just purple hoodie over his Green Goblin costume, and it looks more like his traditional comic book version of his costume. Not completely, because his comic book version looks a little ridiculous, but it's as close as they're gonna get. So he and Peter fight. He fucks up Peter a lot, and then he even Aunt May tries to interfere, and he hits her with his glider, and then he leaves like a bomb behind, and then he flies off, and you realize that like Aunt May seems like kind of fucked up, but she's like, oh, she's fine, but then she collapses, and she got like stabbed by the glider, and you realize, oh no, she's dying. She even gives Peter the line with great power comes great responsibility, which they gave her the Uncle Ben line, and then she dies, and it's just like, damn. It's actually kind of a sad scene. It was pretty well done too. And so Peter's fucked up by that, and he's really angry, and then he just kind of swings off when the police come after him, and he disappears. MJ and Ned know that Aunt May has died and that he's missing, and they're like freaking out, and they don't know what to do. So Ned has Doctor Strange's like ring that allows him to like open up portals. So he starts opening a portal trying to look for Peter. He's like, try to find Peter Parker. So he opens up a portal, and who walks through? Spider-Man. But now there's Spider-Man. It is Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man from the Amazing Spider-Man movies. And he tells them that he's a Spider-Man from a different reality who got teleported through, and he's been trying to figure out what the hell's going on. Because it looks like it wasn't just villains who got teleported from different realities. So they start trying to look for Peter again. And who do they bring in? Tobey Maguire from the original Spider-Man movies. So now we have 2 extra Spider-Men in the fucking deal. and they decide that they gotta go looking for Peter. They're like, is there somewhere he would go? So they go to the roof of the school where they like to hang out, and they find Peter there, and he's upset, and, you know, MJ and Ned can, you know, comfort him at first, and then he sees that there's these two other Spider-Men there, and they, you know, break down the deal for him, like, we're Spider-Mans from other realities, and they all talk, and they commiserate, and they realize, you know, they're obviously very sympathetic to him, because they're also Peter Parkers who have lived very similar, if not identical, lives to him, and they all have their own problems. So they decide they need to, you know, he's angry, he wants vengeance, but he knows that Aunt May would want him to do the right thing, so they're like, we need to cure these guys. Because at first he was just like, I'm just going to send them home, but then MJ won't let him. So he's like, alright, we got to cure these guys. So the Spider-Men decide to work together to create cures for each of their villains, and they do. Well, he already fixed Dr. Octopus, so they just need to come up with cures for the others. It's funny because they're all worried about death, but Sandman didn't die in his movie. He was really the only one who didn't die. He's the only villain that didn't die. He's just like, he was fine. But, you know, fuck it, they gotta cure him too. So what do? They create the cures, and there's the usual, like, jokiness of all these Marvel movies and everything, and, like, there's a lot of flashbacks and references to all the old movies. Like I said, there's a lot of nostalgia, heaviness in this movie. And, they then decide, Peter, calls out, he makes a call to J. Jonah Jameson's podcast, and does a video chat where he reveals that he's at the Statue of Liberty that's being redesigned with a Captain America shield, and he's waiting for the villains there, and he's got the spell box that they know will send them back home, so if they destroy it, they get to stay here, which most of them want to. And so the first three to show up is the first ones to show up are Sandman, Electro, and the Lizard. So it's those three versus the three Spider-Men. They break it down that Tom Holland, Spider-Man, is Spider-Man 1 because it's his universe. Tobey Maguire, Spider-Man, is Spider-Man 2, and Andrew Garfield is Spider-Man 3. Just so you're aware. So they fight, and they have problems fighting at first. There's like talking before the villains get there, where they're just kind of having all these weird, like, little jokey moments and everything. I forget exactly what it was they were talking about. I think you're talking about how, like, Tobey Maguire doesn't have web shooters like they do. Like, it just naturally comes out of his wrists. And there's other things like that. It's like I said, it's the usual quirkiness of these MCU movies. But eventually they fight the villains, and they get in each other's way at first, and they figure out ways to organize, and Peter mentions that he's a member of the Avengers, and they're like, that's great, what are the Avengers? And it's just like, it's like I said, it's the usual jokiness. It's just, it was a weird time to do it, because, like, you guys are in the middle of a fight. So anyways, they start coordinating better, and they manage to the first one they cure is Sandman, and then they cure the Lizard, and then they try going after Electro, but he's too powerful. He's created a harness with an arc reactor he stole from the equipment from Happy's apartment, and he's using it to make himself even more powerful. He has like a weird chest harness, and the electricity is like blasting off of his face, so he actually looks more like his traditional comic book role, or a comic book self too, with the special harness and the weird lightning bolt mask coming off. But they can't get at him, and then all of a sudden, Dr. Octopus shows up, and he acts like he's still a villain, but then he's just actually just trying to get Electro to let his guard down, and he attaches the device to his chest that'll take away his energy powers. At one point, they were trying to they were playing around with that portal thing that Doctor Strange's portal rings, but Ned couldn't close the portal, and they get attacked by the lizard, and then they just come through the other side of the portal to where the fight is taking place, and MJ and Ned are there now, and Ned tries to open another portal, and who walks through but Doctor Strange, and Doctor Strange is pissed, but then he sees that Peter's plan of curing them is actually working, and he's like, ah, shit, alright, fuck it, this actually worked. And so things seem to be going well at first, and then the Green Goblin shows up, and he comes in hard, and they try to stop him, but he blows up the spell box, so then Doctor Strange now has to contain the spell before it just gets completely out of control. He beats up Dr. Octopus a bit, and he manages to hold off all the Spider-Men. He causes an explosion that knocks MJ off the scaffolding, and she falls. And Tom Holland Peter tries to save her, and Green Goblin takes him out of the picture. So Andrew Garfield catches her, so she doesn't hit the ground, and you know that was like his redemption moment for like not being able to save Gwen Stacy in his movie. So that was a little shout out to that. So then Spider-Man 1, Tom Holland Spider-Man, and Green Goblin have a fight on the broken remains of the Statue of Liberty. Like the shield, the Captain America shield they were building, just fell down and was just kind of like on Liberty Island, and they're like fighting on that, and Peter's fighting hard because he wants this dude dead, and he beats the living shit out of Osborn, and instead of going at him with a cure, he picks up his glider like he's gonna kill him, and before he can, Spider-Man 2, Tobey Maguire, jumps in and stops him, kind of like, you know, without even saying, he's like, you don't want to do this, and he manages to calm him down, but then Green Goblin stabs Spider-Man 2 in the back, and it looks like Spider-Man 1 is ready to go at him again, but then Spider-Man 3 throws the cure to Spider-Man 1, he catches it, and jams Osborn in the neck and cures him. So they manage to beat the villains, and they manage to cure him. Problem solved, and even Spider-Man 2 isn't even dead, he's just really hurt, but he's fine. So Spider-Man 1 goes to Doctor Strange, he's like, okay, what's going on? And Doctor Strange is like, I'm trying to contain the spell, but it's like getting out of control. You can see it's like opening the seams of reality, and he's like, I'm trying to close it, but it's getting worse and worse. He's like, they're coming through, and you see like these weird like light images. It's basically everybody who knows Peter Parker and Spider-Man from every different universe. So it's like causing a merging of just crossovers from all these universes, and you see like images that look like, you know, different Spider-Man characters. I'm not going to get into who, but just different Spider-Man characters. If you see their outlines, you'll probably recognize them, or maybe you won't. Maybe you don't know Spider-Man as much as me because you're not a fucking dork. But anyways, Peter goes, okay. He goes like, well, we can just do the original spell. He's like, it's too late for that. And then Peter goes, okay, well then how about we change the spell again? How about you do it that everybody forgets who Peter Parker, instead of forgetting that Peter Parker is Spider-Man, just make it that everybody forgets who Peter Parker is. And Strange is like, I mean, that might work. He goes, but you got to realize the consequences of this. Everybody who knows you will forget you. you'll cease to exist in everybody's mind. You're going to be completely alone. And he's like, yeah, I get it, but he's like, we have to fix this, and it's my fucking problem to begin with, so we have to fix this now. So Strange's like, all right, I can do that. He's like, if you're going to say goodbye to anybody, you need to say it now. And, he says goodbye to Strange, and then he says goodbye to the Spider-Man. He's like, thanks for everything, and they have their hug moment. And then he goes to MJ and Ned and, tells them, like, what's about to happen. Like, you guys are going to forget that I exist. He's like, this just has to be the way. And MJ's like, well, you better come find me when this is over and make me remember, or else I'm going to remember and I'm going to come find you. And he's like, I know, and blah, blah, blah. And it's a sad moment, actually. And Strange completes the spell, and you see everybody return back home to where they're supposed to go. And then it's just like, I think it's the fast forward to like 3 months later, and Peter walks into the coffee shop where MJ works, and she clearly doesn't recognize him, and she and Ned are talking about how they got into MIT, and he has like a note ready that he's going to tell them, he's going to tell MJ, it's like, hey, this is who I am, and try to explain the situation to her. But then he realizes that her life is going well now, and he sees like there's like a band-aid on the side of her head where she got hurt during the fight, and he just thinks, he's like, you know what, she's better off not knowing me. And he just says, he just congratulates her on he asks her about getting into college and if she's excited about it, and he just, congratulates her on getting in, and then leaves and says, I'll see you around. And you see that he's now living in some shitty apartment alone. He goes to Aunt May's grave, and even Happy doesn't recognize him. And you see he's in some shitty apartment alone, and he's taking, he's like getting his GED, because he still doesn't finish high school yet, because they don't know who the fuck he is. Like, nobody knows who he is. Which leads to questions like, how did you rent an apartment? How do you rent an apartment? How do you have money for that? Like, if nobody knows who he is, then there's no record of who he is. There's no birth certificate. There's no any information. Because nobody knows who the fuck he is. Right? So, how do you rent an apartment? It doesn't make any sense. Unless it's like the shittiest apartment on Earth. I guess you wouldn't have to worry about that. I mean, he's Spider-Man. He doesn't worry about getting jumped by a crackhead or something like that. And then you see that he's like made a new costume for himself that's more reminiscent of the original Spider-Man costume. And so it's basically him just on his own completely now. No more influence from like Iron Man or anything like that. And you just see him swinging around because like, well, at least he can go out and still be the hero. But that's it. He's just kind of on his own. So that could just be like the end of the Spider-Man series for now, or it could be even the pickup of a brand new beginning. The way they ended it, it's left very open-ended for however they want to approach it. Now the after-credit scenes. So there's a mid-credit scene and then a completely after-credit scene. The mid-credit scene is just kind of a jokey scene where it shows Tom Hardy, who plays Eddie Brock, aka Venom in the Venom movies, and he's at a tiki bar, and he's just like talking to the bartender about, you realize that he's in the universe too, and he's talking to the bartender about like all the weird differences. He's talking about like Thanos and everything, and all of a sudden then he vanishes. So he was like, all right, I guess I better go to New York, but then all of a sudden he disappears. You realize this is where he was just before the spell got cast to send them all back home. He was one of the people who got pulled through. So it was just kind of like a jokey throwaway thing. And then the after credit scene, you see that it's basically just the trailer for Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness for whenever that comes out, which I'd already seen the trailer, so it was a complete waste of time to sit around for that. But I watched it all over again. It looks like an interesting movie, but I don't even know when it comes out. But the funny thing is, it does raise a question, because that movie directly ties into this movie, because it's basically Strange having to deal with the consequences of his spell tampering with the fabric of reality. But it does raise the question, if he doesn't know who the fuck Peter Parker is anymore, like, he knows of the existence of Spider-Man. It was Peter Parker who was erased, not Spider-Man now. So everybody knows who Spider-Man is. They just don't know who he is because they don't know who Peter Parker is. So if that's the case, and it applies to Strange too, why the hell? He's got to be wondering, why did he conduct a spell to fuck with reality? If somebody asks him that, it's like, well, the reality's all fucked up because of that spell. He's like, yeah, I know. It's like, well, why did you cast that spell? What is he gonna do? Go, you know what? I have no fucking clue. Like, that's a very irresponsible thing for a guy who's supposed to be protecting the world from mystical threats to say, is that he fucked up a spell that fucked with the fabric of reality as we know it. Fucked with the fabric of the multiverse. And when asked why he did it, the only answer he can give is, I don't know. Because he doesn't know who Peter Parker is, which means he has no clue as to why he would have done that spell. He could say it was for Spider-Man. Okay, in what way? He would just go, I don't know, because I don't know who the fuck Spider-Man is, so I don't know why I would do that. Like, it changes the relationship with everybody, even people who know Spider-Man more. So it's like, so even if he does know he did it for Spider-Man, like, then why would Ned and MJ not know that they know Spider-Man? They would just know, I don't know who he is, but they would know that they know him, right? Like, there's a lot of questions about what exactly this spell erased the memory of. Would it only erase the memories of Spider-Man after they knew he was Spider-Man? Peter Parker was Spider-Man? But Doctor Strange has known Peter Parker was Spider-Man since Spider-Man and Doctor Strange met. So wouldn't it erase every memory he has of Spider-Man? It really does raise the question about why he thinks he cast that spell now. Because in his mind, unless they address that in the movie, he's going to be like, I don't know why I tampered with the fabric of reality. That was really fucking irresponsible of me. That's just something that was bothering me. It's a really stupid thing to think about, but it was just something that was bothering me. Okay, this has been really long, and I need to go to bed. So, yeah, that was Spider-Man No Way Home. Like I said, it's my favorite MCU movie of the year. Probably my favorite superhero / comic book movie of the year. I really liked it. I enjoyed it. It, hit us with all the nostalgia, hit us with all the comic book references, which I loved. It was great. I thought it was a great movie. I really enjoyed these Spider-Man movies. I like this Tom Holland kid. I like that they brought back Tobey Maguire, who's looking noticeably older. And, the guy's in his defense, the guy's got to be in his, mid to late 40s now. And Andrew Garfield and everything. And it was cool. It was fun. It's a fun, cool movie. And it was done well. The action was great. The effects looked great. It was just a good movie. So, yeah. Spider-Man No Way Home, 2 thumbs up. Highly recommend it. Alright. I'm about to pass out. So, Merry Christmas, everybody. And, y'all have a good night. Good night.